Good morning, folks. Happy Friday. Unless you just finished watching The Lotus Eaters like I did, in which case you probably got horrendously black-pilled. Especially if you were a fan of the Four Horsemen of the new skeptic, new atheist movement. I very much was. But I came to it because I was a very big fan of Christopher Hitchens, and slightly less so of Richard Dawkins. Sam Harris was never one of my favorites. Um, well, he was fourth out of the four. Let's put it that way. Um, and with his recent trigonometry appearance, um, he's off his fucking head. Sorry. Uh, I'm sick and tired of watching people from that movement, the skeptics, new atheist plus, whatever the hell you want to call it, um, basically completely turning their backs on their principles because of one person they don't like. And Sam himself admits to having Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, dude, if you know you have a problem, why are you still operating as if that's not a problem? He looks up at one point and he says, if Hunter Biden had children buried in his basement, it wouldn't be as bad as Trump. What? Are you off your head? You are taking the same approach as, I mean, over and over we've seen these videos where people are protesting against Trump and claiming, oh, he's committed crimes, he's done this, he's done that, and they'll make these amazing claims, and the moment they're challenged to provide evidence, they either say things like, oh, well, I can't pick one off the top of my head. Well, the motherfucker, if you don't have a single issue in mind, why are you there? That's one. But then the other response is, oh, I'm done talking to you. Excuse me? That's not how getting your message out works. If you have a message to get out, you don't simply say, no, I'm done talking to you, and stop. You actually spread the message. I mean, even if your message is bullshit, like an awful lot of the mainstream media stuff, like Trump is racist against Mexicans. No, he's not. I saw the whole speech the day before you edited it and played with the context. You go fuck yourself. And yes, this one's going to have a lot of swearing. I'll try to remember to throw a white pill in at the end. Try. And this one may not be particularly long. I'll probably do another stream later today, doing a little more work on the flute over there. I got about half of well, the stick itself is half bare. The portion I'm going to use is fully bare, or debarked at least. But what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be shaving it down even more. I'll probably shave a significant portion of um, the sapwood. Sorry, terminology escapes me every now and again. But I'll be shaving a significant amount of the sapwood down. I intend to take all the sapwood off. I intend to have a heartwood flute. But what I will do right now, and I might as well get the piece and show you just a second. So this is a piece of juniper. As you can see, I've cleaned roughly half of it. It's a little more than half. About this much, there we are, about this much is what I intend to use to make a flute. But what I will do, because the heartwood is very thick, I will be removing the sapwood, which is the lighter portion, and I will be making the flute wholly from the heartwood, which is, I believe, relatively straight. I may have to do a little shaping on the sides once I'm done clearing off the sapwood. But once the sapwood is removed from this section, I'll be removing the bark from this section in order to, well, you see, this isn't sticky. This bark is still exceptionally sappy. Uh, Smells and tastes pretty good when you're shaving it, by the way. Which it should. Juniper is used for gin. So, makes sense. Juniper berries, I believe, are used for gin. Though I'm not 100% sure it's necessarily the same species of juniper. I don't think this particular species produces berries. I think it's more buds. But it also makes me wonder if you couldn't make, say, spruce bud beer or whatever. And I seem to recall having heard of such a thing. I know there's a soda pop, a soft drink called birch beer, which Crush makes. If you've ever heard of Orange Crush, the company that makes Crush actually makes a flavor called birch beer, which is ironically incredibly good mixed with cheap whiskey. But um, that particular flavor seems to be pretty rare outside of Newfoundland. And to be honest, it's getting rarer in Newfoundland. Speaking of which, I should probably go and buy a can later just to show you guys. That's actually a good idea, because I haven't had a soft drink in quite a while, and I wouldn't mind a birch beer at this point. There's your weight bill. My childish enjoyment of interesting tastes. But once, as I said, once I take the sapwood off of this side, take the bark off of this side, then I'll leave the sapwood there for grip, because I think one of the mistakes I made with the first one I was trying to make, it was only about this long, and it was much thinner. The heartwood was proportionally the same thickness, but because the piece itself was so thin, I made a couple of big mistakes. One being that the initial hole I drilled was, well, two actually. There's two mistakes here. The first mistake I made was I drilled the hole too small through the center, and then I started drilling right away. What I should have done, and I've watched a couple of videos since, was shape first, drill last. And that's the process I'm going to try to follow this time. I'm also going to try to make an actual flute, as opposed to, well, something this long is probably going to be more like a piccolo. It'll be pretty high-pitched. At least I hope it will. I just hope I can get a decent tone out of it. The last one I made, I was getting something of a tone, but it wasn't great. But apparently, I'm hopeful I'll be able to hit both octaves. This is only the second attempt I've had at making a flute, so we'll see. So yeah, that end will be a handle for shaping and things like that until I'm ready to cut the rest of it loose and do the final drilling. Yeah, so that can sit there. And anyway, to return to Sam Harris, and really the topic isn't so much Sam Harris as it is guiding principles, things like that. If your guiding principle is skepticism, and you realize that you've developed a sort of mental derangement towards one particular individual that you can't articulate the reasons for, then you've got a very big problem. You're, firstly, no longer a skeptic, because you are no longer engaging only your rational mind on a problem. Now, granted, it's very rare for human beings to only operate on the basis of rationality, and not uncommon for us to have emotional reasons that we rationalize, or emotional motivations that we then rationalize. But that rationalization, sorry, I've got an eyelash in my field of view and it's driving me off my head. There we go. But that rationalization can be perfectly justifiable if it's actually based on truth and fact. In the case of many of the former skeptics, this isn't what's going on. What's going on is they've either, in the case of, I believe it's Matt Dillahunty. If I'm wrong, I do apologize to Matt. I respect him mostly. But if I recall correctly, Matt has gone completely woke and surrendered to the new religion of wokeness. The idea that all people are equal on all levels and all this sort of bullshit. That's just dangerous and stupid, in my opinion. Beyond that, and one of the things I'm trying to do to create better habits for myself is to keep a bottle of water out here every time I have a cigarette. I drink at least a couple of mouthfuls. Um, okay. But yeah, to return to the topic at hand, if your motivation for changing your entire worldview is based on an assumption that you cannot back up with facts or other evidence, whether other people accept those evidences or not, in the case of religion. Uh, I personally don't have faith, mostly because I have an inability to accept the idea that a deity exists on the evidence that the faithful present. Now, that's not to say I don't think their evidence is valid to them. It's just that it doesn't reach me. Um, I have great respect for people of faith. Uh, Maintaining faith must be an absolute struggle because with the doubts that I have as a science-based individual, and I mean real science, not trust the expert opinion science, Sam, uh, with my particular worldview, I very much accept and embrace the Christian traditions, the idea of forgiveness and redemption especially. I've lived, well, let's just say everyone has a history and a past. And in my own case, um, forgiveness and redemption are important to me, not because I empirically need them, though I do, but because they are wonderful ideals to maintain. And these are Christian ideals. Uh, I'm not aware of any religion other than Christianity that provides forgiveness and redemption at a religious level as opposed to a cultural one. Now, that may be an effect of my limited education with other um, religions. Uh, I was a pagan cleric for quite a while, and having seen a very, very uh, deep lack of forgiveness as a tenet of that religion, of any number of the pagan religions, Wicca, Asatru. Now, with Asatru, I know there is at least some holdover from the Viking uh, ethos, where you can be redeemed in battle, but that's not really necessarily particularly applicable to today's life. Now, I know I have some current neo-pagans in my audience, and if you want to challenge me on any of those points, I absolutely welcome the education. Uh, but living in a Western society, got a bit of sawdust in my hair, got a bit of hair, but living in a Western society, it is absolutely essential to accept that the foundations of our society and significantly our law system are based on forgiveness and redemption. Uh, take, for example, someone who commits theft. You are forgiven once you have redeemed yourself. Now, it used to be that that redemption required a period of incarceration or community service or um, some other form of atonement. And at that point, the forgiveness was supposed to come from society and from the idea that, okay, you've redeemed yourself, we now release you from whatever obligation or incarceration. Unfortunately, it's become extremely unusual for people to be forgiven by society at large. The idea that a man has paid his debt to society seems to be long gone. Uh, Now, that's one of the conservative views that I hold to. That once a man has paid his debt to society, he should be welcomed back into society with all the rights and obligations of a citizen. So the idea, for me, the idea that a convicted felon is no longer allowed to, in the States, for example, is no longer allowed to exercise his Second Amendment rights is actually wrong. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people who say, oh no, a violent criminal should not be allowed to own a gun ever again. No, I disagree. And the reason I disagree is because their lives can be far more dangerous than the average person. Take someone who's walked away from a gang. Gang members don't care if they carry guns. They don't give a damn about the law. They might show up to that guy's house and tell him, you're coming back to the gang or we're going to shoot you. Well, how's he supposed to defend himself against that if he wants to actually, quote unquote, go straight? He's kind of screwed. He may have, at that point, started a family or returned to a family, and that family may be under threat. My personal thinking, it would be really nice if that guy could shoot the people threatening his family and do it legally. So, I mean, justice systems need reformation just as much as religions in some cases. I'm getting a bunch of notifications, I apologize. But, yeah, I mean, we have to stick to our principles. And that doesn't simply mean you can change, it doesn't mean you can't change what you adhere to, but it does mean that you should do it for a good reason. Someone getting elected that you don't like, it's not a good reason, Sam. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, folks, I'm going to cut it off here. As I said, I will probably do a little bit more of a live stream later today. Most likely, all I'll be doing is at least starting, because that's pretty hard wood, and that's about an inch or so. Well, no, probably 3/4 of an inch of diameter I have to remove from this stick. It's beautiful wood. I mean, it's got a gorgeous grain pattern. I wish it didn't have quite so many inclusions, but it is what it is. Naturally harvested, so what can you do? Anyway, like I say, that'll be later today. If you've stuck around to the end, I would appreciate a like, a share, a subscribe, and a comment. Always appreciate comments. I love conversing with people. My apologies, that was a little more productive of a cough than I expected it to be. Anyway. Yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment. I appreciate conversation. I think it's something that we've kind of lost a little bit as a society with the digital tech, with social media. And if you feel so inclined, there is a donation link. If you're interested in purchasing one of my projects, currently the only one I have for sale is the candle holder. And currently the only way to access that is through my Getter account. Or, if you wish, you can contact me via email at offthewallwoodcraft@hotmail.com. I'll try to remember to put that link in the description. And Other than that, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you continue to have good days and rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.